richardlloyd.com. Highly recommend it. He, in his description, that the major scale is the major scale, not to contrast it to the minor scales, because it's the most important scale, and everything comes from that. And he does some really wacky stuff. Richard Lloyd, 2 L's, all one word.com. He's got some great examples for playing, as well as some discussion of theory. It's an awesome thing. And he's in New York, and he actually gives private lessons. It's only $100 an hour or something ridiculous. It's a chance to sit down with him. He also does a video for guitar like that. Anyway, so the major scale is important, but every scale also has a relative minor, which is basically a different scale and a different type of mood. And these are the 2 types we really talk about, the major and the minor. So we'll play major scales. That's C major. C minor would be. It's got a bit of a darker feel to it, and probably would help if I played it smoother. But the minor is often considered a darker chord. It's used either for sadder things or for conflict and resolution in the writing passages. Of course, D minor is the saddest of all keys. So you got that. So this is another thing I don't see too often, but I basically took the same circle of fifths and I labeled them for minor keys. So if C major is the key, the major key that has no sharps or flats, A minor is the minor key that has no sharps or flats. So if we play an A minor scale, all the white keys, but starting on A. And you can see it has a different sound to it than the C scale does. And actually what's interesting is that the minor key is actually rotated to the left by 3 positions. So it's rotated like 90 degrees, which if you go through it, right, you get C to D to D to A. So that's 3/5, right? There's lots of numerology and math in this that I don't quite understand, but there's a lot of interesting stuff that goes back and forth. Okay, so now we're going to talk about scales, which we already started talking about with everything simple. So scales, by definition, kind of are a series of musical notes strung together. Okay? And they follow a specific pattern. Like any melody is a series of notes put together. But there are specific ones that we call scales. So we have some scales that don't belong to a key. And these are of somewhat limited use. But for instance, a chromatic scale is quite simply just everything in an octave. So, you get the picture. And that has no key. It just has a different starting point. It's the same scale no matter what. Then you also have whole tone scales, which are basically a whole step between notes. And there's really basically 2 of those. That starts on C and then on C sharp. And those are whole, and of limited use. Although I'm sure there's some instances where you use a lot. Chromatic, all the chromatic stuff is thrown in with other stuff. Slayer, again, very big on using chromatic scales. Mixed in with it. But then we talk about diatonic scales, and these are scales that belong to a key. So they're kind of more what things are based on generally. So the first thing to talk about is called a tetrachord, which is actually a scale. I have no idea why it's called a tetrachord. It's a scale, not a tetrascale, but it just is. So these are the first 4 notes of major scale, actually. So in C, that's C, D, E, F. Now if we go to F, which is the first flat key, it's and then, you can just the G. And it's the first 4 notes, and it's basically you specify by the interval whole step, half step, right? So C to D, whole step, D to E, whole step, D to F, half step. And then you can construct a major scale by stringing together 2 tetrachords separated by a whole step, right? So whole, half, then skip a whole step, whole, half. And that's a major scale, it's a C major scale. And the interesting thing about that I didn't realize is, you know, what the C major scale is the C tetrachord followed by the G tetrachord. The G tetrachord is one position to the right, you see on the circle of fifths. The same thing. The F major scale is the F tetrachord followed by C tetrachord. You know, this is these, like I didn't even realize that till recently. I'm not sure what profound impact it has on life, but, you know, kind of interesting stuff. This whole numerology system that is built into it and evolved over time, and probably, and in large part evolved because of what is pleasant to hear, has this certain inherent mathematical niceness to it. Okay, so that's the major scale, and you can, you know, I just put a few examples of major scale in different keys. They have different numbers of sharps and flats. So on a piano, now this is where it's nice to compare and contrast instruments. On a piano, that means you've got to play different keys, different white and black keys. On a guitar, it simply means you slide to a different fret, but the pattern is identical on a guitar. So if you play a major scale, you know, it's ring finger, pinky, index, ring, pinky, index, excuse me, labeling them wrong. It's middle pinky, index, middle pinky, index, ring, pinky. Yeah, and that across 3 strings, and that repeats anywhere you go until you get to a weird string that doesn't match on the others. But you know, we'll talk about that later. So guitars frequently play in the key of A or E, which is no big deal. I mean, if you look at E minor isn't too bad because there aren't too many issues, but A major's got 3 sharps. It's a little more pain on the keyboard, you know, less efficient. But it all depends on the instrument. Okay, so other scales. We talked about the major scale. Played the major scale enough. Talk about the minor scale. The minor scale that we normally talk about when we say minor is the natural minor. So if we're in A, it's the white key starting at A. Now, you can alter that a couple ways and get other scales. The harmonic minor has got a really different flavor. That's the same thing as the natural minor, but instead of the minor 7th interval, it has a major 7th interval. So it's got a different feel to it. So, yeah, let's see if I can show you. There's something about that 7th that sounds a little darker. You know, the name harmonic, obviously, right, it has to do with the harmony. The melodic minor is kind of weird because it's got hysteresis. It does something different when it goes up than when it goes down. So if you play a melodic minor going up, different depending on whether you're ascending or descending. And why, I really have no idea. But there's, you know, probably some underlying sound quality issue that